Hi, this is Dave Kelly, and this is the Man Shit Podcast, where we interview all manner of people, providing real-life tips for men to be better men. Today I'm interviewing Jonathan Gilinski. Jonathan's business is the largest online supplier of medicinal capsules to the US pharmaceutical industry. Jonathan discusses with me some of the company's innovative products that were developed for children's medication and other medicinal marijuana products for children with brain injuries. We also have a good old chat about COVID-19 vaccines and ethical capitalism. Enjoy the episode. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. Today I'm talking to a friend of mine, Jonathan Gilinski. Jonathan's an American entrepreneur and founder of Capsuline, which is the largest number one online capsule supplier in the US. And he's also Executive Director of CapsCanada. He's done many things in business, but a couple of things as reading Jonathan's bio really highlighted to me. He's developed a new product called FLAVORCAPS, and it's a patented line of flavoured capsules specifically to optimise appeal for kids with autism and other pediatric applications. He's also a subject matter expert. He's been recently featured in Entrepreneur, The Huffington Post, CNBC, Money, Success and more, and particularly in the area of customised encapsulation, medicinal cannabis, innovations, and he's a sought-after speaker in these subject areas. As a philanthropist, Jonathan's got a number of things going, and I want to touch on those things as we get going, and he's focused some of these initiatives in education and nutrition, groundbreaking cancer and medicinal cannabis research aimed at finding cures for children suffering from encephalopathies. And that's a large word which I've come across, and I'll let Jonathan expand on that further. But Jonathan, welcome to the podcast, mate. Look, tell us a little bit about your history. The company seems a very established company in the sector. How did you get into it? And are we talking first generation, second generation business?
We're actually talking about a third generation. So it's a third generation family business, and we've been in the capsule manufacturing space for over 35 years. Initially, when I left college, I wanted to go work on my own, and I went to law school, and you always try to do things by yourself. And then I was pretty much brought into the business because of the penetration of e-commerce. That's what actually drove me to it.
Okay.
That was back in 2002. So the internet was not as it is today. It was pretty much in its infancy. And so I saw an opportunity to sell what we manufactured, which is a 2-piece hard capsule, online. I didn't have much money back then, if any at all.
When
I had friends.
Which decade?
This was back in 2002.
Okay.
So what I did is I went out and I built out the first e-commerce platform to supply the empty capsules to consumers, direct to consumers. And it was difficult at that time because there wasn't all this technology that you and I know, Shopify. I mean, Google Ads wasn't even there back then. It was called Overture, which is now part of Yahoo Marketing, and it was you didn't have all the metrics and analytics that you can use and employ back then. But nevertheless, I stuck to it, and then that allowed me to work within the family, but also run a separate division, which I scaled to what we have today. And then from there, I merged into the parent company, and I took over the executive director position at the main company while still overseeing operations for the e-commerce, because at the end of the day, that's what I really enjoy.
Hey, Jonathan, one of the things that I heard you interviewed recently, and it was on the topic of how compromised the American medical supply chain was coming into COVID-19, and you were emphasising in that interview about the fact that so much had been outsourced to China, and then when we needed to really, as the American medical system's concerned, really bolster supplies, it just wasn't possible. So what's happening in that? What's the backstory to that, and what are you doing? Are you having some success in, alerting to people to the fact that there's a problem there and we need to take control of it?
I mean, there's a lot of questions in this one, so I'll try to address it as accurately and as many stats as possible. The way I saw it, and I've been sounding the alarm on this for quite a while, is I saw a shift from when I started working and selling capsules, because I've been selling capsules. I started off from the bottom up. I used to see a lot of the manufacturing being done here in the U.S., and this was, again, almost 20 years ago. For that matter, I've been involved with the business way before that. And then as I attended these pharmaceutical shows, I started seeing a shift, a pivot away from manufacturing in North America, and it started moving overseas, gradually overseas. And to give you some interesting stats, 72% of the manufacturing facilities of APIs, or active pharmaceutical ingredients, are overseas. There's only 28% here in the States. Sure. So these are the actual active ingredients that you find within a tablet or a capsule, either or liquid form, right? 18 back then, this was a statistic back in March, April, 18 of the 21 COVID antibiotics have 80% of their supply chain coming from India and China. Imagine that. When you also have about, I think it's 90, U.S. Department of Commerce study found that 97% of the antibiotics sold in this country are coming from China. Right? Wow. And take, for example, acetaminophen, or we know it as Tylenol. 70% of that is manufactured in China. Right? Take Advil or ibuprofen. 90% of it is manufactured in China. So this was somewhat alarming to me, because we pretty much have all of our essential medication and non-essential medication sourced overseas. And it's quite concerning. Quite concerning. And no one really paid attention to that, because everybody was focused solely on cost. I don't want to pay. But there's so much more involved to it than just cost. Yes. Right? Yes. You don't have oversight in countries like China. They barely let the US government go in and look at what was going on with COVID, let alone let the FDA go in and regulate these ingredients that are being manufactured God knows where. Yes. Without any clear focus on quality, right? Yes. So all of these different factors and issues, started popping up, and I decided to dig in deeper, and I spent the last pretty much the majority part of this year compiling a significant research paper to illustrate how vulnerable we were to this situation.
And that's developing supply chain in that regard, and the infrastructure to produce at that same equivalent level of production is not an overnight exercise, is it? But do you think that there's been enough shake-up and realisation that the vulnerabilities to the whole supply chain that will actually change and force a greater amount of production within the US?
No, listen, I sure hope so. I sure hope this is a significant wake-up call, because, and to answer your question, look at the investments going into Kodak. Kodak used to be a film company, right? And now they're going to be focused on manufacturing APIs. Look at other investments and other grants that the U.S. government has given. So the point here is, and the way I see it is, you have the two most populous countries in the world. China with 1.5 billion and India with 1.4 billion people. Let's just for the sake of argument, round up to 3 billion people, right? A third of the world's population. Yeah. These two countries are responsible for the medication that we consume in this country. Now, in a situation like the one we're in right now, these countries have a moral obligation, a fiduciary duty to supply their population before us. Sure. And right, and so you'll see, and if you read the headlines, even India decided to ban the export of some of these drugs, as I mentioned earlier.
Sure.
So that's alarming. Listen, if this is not a wake-up call, and if
Yeah.
my efforts to get the message across,
Yes.
is not successful, we're going to most likely walk into a pharmacy and have those shelves empty. There's going to be empty shelves in
Exactly.
pharmacy. Discontinued.
Yeah. Now, I know in my country of Australia, we've really most manufacturing has now been completely outsourced to both China and India, and so just we're left very vulnerable now. And rebuilding back that infrastructure base, when you're talking about equipment and facilities, it isn't. It requires a large amount of investment. Once it's gone, it's very difficult to rebuild it. But arguably, pharmaceuticals is where we need to place focus, because that's.
But Dave, let me explain something to you. This all transpired in the last 50 years. And what was the driving factor? Cost.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah, sure.
So it was cost. So all these facilities manufacturing products here took their manufacturing overseas. We lost jobs, significant jobs, like scientists and chemists, which are brilliant minds.
Sure.
We lost those jobs. Or those jobs were transferred over to China, where we transferred our intellectual property to them and we taught them how to do everything, correct? They started manufacturing with cheap labor and government subsidies at a lower cost than the entire Western Hemisphere. So if everything is driven through by cost and you transfer your production overseas, what happens to the manufacturing facilities in the Western Hemisphere? They can't compete.
Sure.
So ultimately they go out of business. And if they go out of business, you're only left with the companies in China, which now dictate the price.
Sure.
So in the case, if you look at, I like to use the example of vitamin C. There's only about 4 players, and they're in China. They manufacture vitamin C. That's it. Because they lower the price. Everybody manufacturing vitamin C is out of the market. And now this is literally a monopoly. You have 4 players. I call it a monopoly. They can do whatever they want. So they'll increase the price on vitamin C, right? And that's what we have to realize.
Yes, that's right.
Just because you pay less for a product for a given amount of time doesn't mean that's going to continue. Because right now we're left with only 4 or 5 suppliers of a critical supplement, right?
Yes. It also takes backbone and will of government to support those industries, doesn't it? If there's going to be a change and bring that back onto home soil.
But I don't think it was the government's fault in a way. It was because you can always blame it on politics, but you have CEOs running these massive pharmaceutical companies, and all they care about is their quarterly reviews on CNBC,
sure,
or Bloomberg or whatever, and they want to tell their shareholders, listen, we made money. And how do you make money? Anybody who runs a business will understand that one of the ways you make money is obviously through sales and through cutting costs. One of the ways to cut costs is to manufacture for less. And if you have a scientist in the U.S. it costs you $150,000 a year, you'll get the same scientist for $50,000 a year over in China. Yeah. And then all these different events will transpire. Obviously, the shareholders will be great. The stock will go up, but we'll end up in a position where we are right now.
Yes.
And where we are right now, it's not worth the cost that you want it, because ultimately you're going to end up paying more. You're at their mercy.
And given that, and I guess that's my point, that if commerce is going to be what it is and capitalism will run in the same way as it currently is, then there's got to be something external come in to change that and bring that with the investment and the support required, whether that's through tax breaks or whatever, to bring that manufacturing back into the US, or else capitalism will rule and things will, you'll still try and cut the bottom line where you can.
Listen, the responsible capitalism, I think, is fair, right? If you put in the work, you should get paid. But when it comes to medicine, it's a delicate subject, because you're talking about people's health, right? Without certain medication, without diabetes drugs, with antibiotics, without any of these drugs, you go back in time. Sure. You have a lot of deaths and a lot of agony. There used to be an incentive. It was called the 1976 Tax Reform Act. And what that did, it incentivized companies to move to Puerto Rico and manufacture in Puerto Rico. So if you go to Puerto Rico, you see there's significant infrastructure that's no longer used because of politics, and they abolished that law. But you had tax incentives, and you had a lot of great companies manufacturing in Puerto Rico, creating jobs, and you had control and access to facilities about an hour and a half, 2-hour flight from the States.
Yeah.
Those incentives, because of political reasons, were abolished, and now only 28% of these ingredients or these active pharmaceutical ingredients are manufactured in the U.S.
Yes. Well, let's hope that saner minds prevail going forwards for when COVID 20 or 21 comes around.
Well, you take into account this. This is also very important for your listeners. You get the active pharmaceutical ingredient from India or China. You bring it to the U.S. You put it in one of my capsules, right? And then you put it in a bottle. Ultimately, it hits the shelf, and it's manufactured in the U.S. That is wrong. That product is not manufactured in the U.S.
Yes.
I'm advocating for clear label traceability so that you know exactly where your product's manufactured. That means the active pharmaceutical ingredient.
Yes.
And the capsule, you know where they came from.
Sure.
Right? That's going to be key. Know where your product came from. And then do it, again, responsible capitalism. Because if you're reckless the way that the Chinese are in their manufacturing of antibiotics, you're going to have major issues. And what I'm talking about is the disposal of these raw materials that are used to manufacture APIs are not done responsibly. They're being thrown into lakes, rivers, and this ultimately this pollution is going into the livestock, right? Listen to this. This has been proven. They're polluting the rivers and the oceans and the land, and then the same livestock that's being consumed is consuming the waste that is not responsibly disposed of, and then you and I are going and eating the poultry or the meat, and what this does is this creates what is known as superbugs. Yeah. Antimicrobial resistant superbugs. Superbugs are an enhanced or morphed version of the flu. And the same drugs that are used to cure are the ones now causing these severe illnesses and viruses that are going around. So don't be surprised to see more of this stuff. Don't be surprised that your flu shot that you've been taking for 10 years no longer works. Yeah. Right. So it's not only about capitalism, it's about responsible capitalism. It's the same way I'll compare this to renewable energy, renewable resources, right? You can do it as long as you do it responsibly, because if you don't, what's the point? It's going to backfire anyway. Yeah, agree. Yeah, well, really that labeling should be assembled in the USA, not manufactured, right? It's assembled in the US. It's assembled in the US. It shouldn't, man. You should be able to say the active ingredient is manufactured in X country, at X factory, at X location. The binders that get the binders or the binders are what keeps the ingredient together, or fillers or whatever you want to call it, is manufactured in this country. They bring this in 25 kilo barrels, where they're later mixed in a facility here in the US and then put into tablet form or capsule form or any other form, any other delivery form. Yeah. And then your bottle says made in the US, but it's not. Jonathan, one of the things I really noticed when I moved from Australia to the US was the food labelling laws, in the same way we're talking about now. In Australia, if you're buying a packaged product, you can pretty much tell where the components of that product in its proportional, either by weight or percentage, and also the country of origin of the raw materials. And the food labelling laws that I've noticed in the US are really not disclosing a lot of that. So it's the same topic, it's about being responsible, being transparent. But that has driven a huge a segment of the market and individuals and consumers to what you and I know as organic, or clean label, right? Yes. So look at the organic market, where you know where your strawberry comes from and there's no pesticide. That market is booming, and it's precisely because of these actions. Yes, exactly. So this year we've had a different year, obviously, with COVID-19. How's that affected your business, and how's it affected you as an operation of, in the delivering your business? Has it been a positive year in terms of sales and profit? I mean, listen, it's been a busy year. I'm not saying it's been the best year or the worst year. We have a pretty consistent operation. We have a really good customers, so they're not one-offs. These are industry leaders. But people have now become more aware of their health and underlying conditions. So a lot of consumers are moving towards preventive medication. A lot of preventive medication is obviously you don't need any prescriptions, so you'll buy online. You'll buy online on retail or whatnot. And this is mainly the nutritional supplement space, and you hear a lot about a vitamin D deficiency being a contributor to a severe case of COVID. So you'll see a spike in vitamin D, right? You'll see our president being given zinc. So you'll see a spike in consumption of zinc, right? So these are trends, and these are trends. Are they here to stay? I think this is going to obviously open up people's mind in terms of them being more aware of their health and the fact that supplementation can assist. Obviously, you got to put in the work, but like I said, it's because there's trends or spikes in specific products doesn't mean that anything goes up and down. I rather have a consistent business than a volatile business.
Right, sure. Jonathan, in terms of COVID, and have you got any comment you could leave us with with regard to the race to build vaccines? You've obviously been in that business, in the medical business, supply business for some time, and the whole process around, by force of nature and by force of need, I suppose, is to get this vaccine ready on the shelves, distributed much more quickly than previously.
Right. This morning, Johnson & Johnson halted their trials because there was some issues. So this is my personal view on the vaccine. Now, I'll go out and I'll take the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine has been out for a while, and there's sufficient amount of data to indicate it's effective and it's safe. So for me, it's not more of a matter of rushing to get the vaccine, because you can't rush to get a vaccine and then have issues down the road. You want to know that the vaccine is effective and safe. So for me, it's do it right rather than rush to do it and then have issues down the road. And these issues might pop up 2 years or 3 years down where you have some organ damage or certain repercussions. So whatever is done on the vaccine front should be done methodically and thought through the entire process and done like any other vaccine. This should not be rushed. You rush it, it'll backfire. So my focus on vaccine is efficacy and safety.
Sure. And I think that's, but as I've talked to people about this very topic, there's two extremes. And one extreme is the person who is just so frustrated and been disturbed by the way their life's changed, and they're thinking that the panacea and the solution to that will be getting a vaccine. So as soon as that vaccine comes out, man, I'm going to be first in the queue. And then you've got others who are like you've just expressed, and I have the similar opinion, which is, man, no one's going to go injecting me with something that's not well and truly proven. So, but whilst we're in this,
you won't be the first one to get the vaccine anyways. There's healthcare workers who are on the front line, and there's other people who get it, because to supply a vaccine, you're talking about billions and billions of doses. And yes, there's people on both sides of the aisle. If you're not going to get a vaccine, then you're going to have to change your lifestyle. You're going to have to wear a mask. You're going to have to practice social distancing. You're going to have to wash your hands, and you're going to have to follow that set of rules and that lifestyle. Again, I personally wouldn't rush to inject anything. Now we've been discussing, and there's talk about vaccines that are nasal sprays or tablets or other forms of treatments that you don't necessarily inject into your body that can help you. If you contract the virus, it will assist you in recovering faster, or having a strong immune system that in turn will cause the virus to have a lower or less detrimental effect on your body.
Yes.
But again, it all has to be done with thought, right? And you need to focus on safety before efficacy before rushing.
Sure.
I mean, people shouldn't, you shouldn't focus your life on a vaccine. I would continue doing, or practicing what we know that works.
Yeah.
And every day there's more and more data coming out and more studies being published as to what works and what doesn't. And it's each person's prerogative to see how they behave and what they do with their life. If you want to go and stand in a massive, or go to a bar in a closed area with a bunch of people that don't have masks, listen, you assume the consequence. I personally don't go to restaurants and sit inside. If I go, I'll go sit outside, right? Sure. So again, it's a matter of adapting to your lifestyle before rushing to say, let me get a vaccine.
Yeah. So how's...
Yeah, sorry, Dave. One more thing. This is not the first nor the last time we're going to see this.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that completely. How are we looking coming into the winter of the Northern Hemisphere winter with regard to COVID? When we, would logically expect that as flus and other respiratory diseases are more prevalent in winter and colder times of the year. You're in Florida, so it's not as extreme. But if you head up to New York, when I was there a few weeks ago, there's a real sense of, what are we doing? We can't, at the moment, there's only outdoor dining. That's not going to be possible as you hit the winter in New York. And you're going to be arguably taking people indoors to keep those businesses going. And therefore, the social distancing goes out the door, etc. And the metrics just don't work, do they? But how do you think we're looking in terms of the timing of where we're up to with the way the disease is being treated coming into winter?
Listen, like I said, there's already a lot of data out there that gives you an idea as to how this virus spreads or doesn't. The beauty of this country is you're free to do what you want, and you should be. No one should be telling you what to do or when to do it. You should respect others. If you're going to go outside and you're going to go to a crowd and wear a mask or socially distant. If you can't dine outside and you wish to dine inside, then you are going to have to assume there might be consequences with it, right? Again, some people are not concerned. I have people on both sides of the aisle. People are not concerned with it. They don't think it's a big deal. So fine, so they can go and behave in such a way as long as they respect the other group of individuals sitting in the other side of the aisle that do. And for those that do respect it, then you have to. I have a grandmother that has underlying health conditions. Yeah. Winter comes, I don't think I don't think her behavior is going to change much. She's still going to be careful. She's still going to go around. But at the same time, you cannot stop living. Right? You cannot stop living. You can't lock your kids inside. You can't lock yourself inside. You just have to change the way you do things. Sure.
Yeah. The common discussion that's with regarding health and when we're talking about vaccines, we're talking about prevention of what's going on, but there's very little talked about, from what I'm seeing, about what we can do proactively to boost our own immunity and become stronger. But I know in this period of time, I know your fitness has really gone through the roof, hasn't it, in the last for this year and probably for the last 12 months.
Yeah, but that's it. Aside the point of the virus, that was a personal goal I set where I said I'm going to focus on my health because obviously, those are personal goals. But take for instance the fact of a healthier immune system or not being overweight. If you're overweight, you already know that this virus is going to be it's gonna take a bigger toll on you, right? Sure. So listen, try to lose some weight, try to manage your diet. If you lack vitamin D, for God's sake, go outside and get some sun if you can. If not, supplement yourself with vitamin D. A change in lifestyle to a healthier lifestyle is not going to hurt anyone. So I see that as a silver lining. It's these viruses telling you if you're healthy, you'll fare okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, you won't. Now, my concern lies more with those in the older crowd. You know, I mean, a grandmother, a grandfather, they're not gonna work out. Right. So you have to respect that. That's where you have to respect that, right?
Absolutely.
What you do for yourself, and then what you'll do respecting others.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, well, that's right. That's it's about responsibility, in my opinion. And, you know, we can control a few things in our life, and there's lots of other things we get a chance to respond to and not necessarily control from the outset. And our health, what we eat, the way we move our body, there's certainly things within our ability to choose every day. I wanted to just talk about, as I mentioned in the introduction, about FLAVORCAPS and also the encephalopathies field that you've been working in with regard to medical cannabis. Can you talk a little bit about how those innovations really, it seems that those businesses you've founded in those areas and the research and development and the investment there really sort of, it's a snapshot of where your heart is. It's as a businessman, but also as an innovator, and also as in a form of giving back to different communities where that's less advantaged than what we are.
Again, I'll be happy to dive into this. Personally, I have kids, and when to see children go through pain and trouble and any health related issues, for me at least, it touches my heart. It's something that if I can do something, I will. And that was the underlying reason why I did the flavor capsules. And the flavor capsules, I actually called them fun caps. And it all stemmed from, I started analyzing, I started looking at the data as to who was buying online. And I was actually picking up the phone back then and talking to people buying from me. And what I realized prior to coming up with the fun capsules, the flavor capsules, was I had a lot of parents that were buying the capsules to administer medication to autistic children that have to take a bunch of supplements. And for them, this is you have a kid, you got to feed them a bunch of capsules. It's miserable. It's miserable, and in no way, shape, or form. Do you want to see any suffering? So that's when the light bulb went on and said, well, what can I do?
That's awesome.
As a capsule manufacturer, and that's when I came up with the idea of creating these fun flavored capsules with flavors such as bubblegum and grape and orange and strawberry. And then I went further ahead and I printed animals on them, so hippopotamus and lions, and so I was talking back and forth with my clients. I said, listen, with my customers, and I was saying, well, I came up with these flavors and I printed all these different animals, and it'll be much funner or easy, not funner, that's not the right word. It'll be easier to administer medication to children if they get to take the bubblegum giraffe flavored cap. And so it worked. And so again, that was more inner satisfaction, personal satisfaction than anything else. The fact that it's now widely used in pediatrics, great. And then, I branched out because it happened to be that the chicken flavor was great to administer medication to cats. Who knew? So I have the number one selling capsules for cats. I didn't expect that to happen. It was an offset, but I did it for the good. It wasn't. That wasn't the focus behind it. Was in a monetary benefit, right? It was more inner satisfaction, because for in that case, if I feel good, I'm gonna feel good about what I'm doing. Much more like doing a positive task and helping others than by making money. For me, that's a different type of richness, right? That's the real wealth, when you feel good inside about what you're doing. As for the cannabis project, what drove me to that, it was and what you've been discussing, and it's mainly seizures, right? Epileptic seizures in children. So again, I did it in the past. Why not do it again? But this particular field, we were able to extract the oil, put it in one of these capsules, and this is CBD. This is non-psychoactive. So you give it to children. So you extract the oil, you put it into these flavored capsules, and you administer the recommended dose, and you see a decline in the number of seizures that are happening to these children, to a point where some children are no longer having seizures.
Wow.
So on that front, we went in. We worked with a charity, financially supported the charity, but not only financially, because there's one thing is here's some money, go do what you do. But how about this is what I think you should do on the medical front. This is what we can help you with, and this is what we'll do for you. Give it a shot, right? And because CBD in itself is not very tasty. Put it in a flavored capsule, and it's the same. You're simply duplicating what you already did on the autism front, but on a different medical condition.
Tremendous.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's great. That's wonderful. I mean, it's great to see a heartfelt project be successful for the purpose of it, but also if you're not losing money, you're making money out of it. Then it's obviously what the goal of business is, to make money and not lose.
Yeah,
money.
But if you wake up every morning and you're helping mothers give medication to their children, or you're helping a cat owner medicate their cat, and they're sending you emails, and the emails, I'll show you the emails. They can't believe this is out there. They can't believe they didn't hear about it.
Wonderful.
That is a motivation for me to get out of bed more than the financial gain. To get an email from mom saying, "Hey, my son took the grape flavor capsule because I had a rhino and he's doing fine, and thank you." You wake up and that's your real motivation, right? It's much more than the financial part of it. And that's, I think, what drives me.
Wonderful. Yeah. Congratulations on that. That's a great, it's a great innovation, and well done. Keep on. You got some more in the pipeline?
I do. I mean, some of these you don't plan for, but you always keep your eye open. There's some interesting plants out there that we're going to be launching a new line coming soon. I'll be happy to come on and tell you about it.
Terrific.
But yes, I'm always looking for new opportunities and ways to help.
Yeah.
And that I don't think that I'll ever change that aspect of it.
Hey, Jonathan, the Manship Project, what we're doing there, we're reaching men who, and in different areas of their life, but one of those areas is guys who feel like maybe they've hit the wall in business. They're not making perhaps the money they want. They're not getting satisfaction. You're talking about getting satisfaction out of what you're doing. And what could you say to our audience of guys if they're finding themselves at the moment at a wall, whether that's not just earning capacity, but it's purpose in what they're doing? I think a lot of guys get to a point where they think, I want purpose.
You know what I'll say? You know what I'll say, Dave? I'll tell them you're approaching it the wrong way, because I went through that myself. It was all about the grind and the hustle, You have to put some heart into what you're doing. You have to be able to wake up and enjoy it. You have to go to sleep enjoying what you do. Change your mindset and your approach, because it doesn't always have to be about the money. It can be about doing good. And when you get to that point of realizing that you're doing something good or helping someone, even if it's not directly contributed to your business, but your business can be generating sufficient amount of revenues where you can take part of that and use it for good, you will see that in return, your business is going to grow, because your mindset is going to grow, because your mindset is going to change, because you're waking up with a feeling of satisfaction of doing good.
Sure. And
there's nothing like that. When someone wakes up happy and content for doing good, the mindset changes, right? So let's say you have a software business. It doesn't necessarily mean that a software business you can provide flavored capsules to children or for seizures, but you're making money. Yeah. Pick a cause. Pick a cause, whether it's either helping humanity, cleaning the ocean, which is destroyed, helping the environment, whatever it is that's going to bring satisfaction to you internally, not monetary. That ultimately shifts your perception of how things function and work. Right. And that's going to help you wake up in the morning and actually enjoy it. It's going to help you get away around the wall. At least it worked for me, because it wasn't working for 15 years until I changed that.
That's wonderful. Well, Jonathan, I think that's a great place to leave this our little discussion. And look, all the best with those new innovations. Congratulations on being able to pivot and develop some new products with heart. And it's exciting to see that they've really been well received. And I look forward to hearing, the next couple of turns and these new medicinal plants and things you're working with for the benefit of others.
Absolutely. Dave, thank you for having me. It's always good talking to you.
Wonderful.
I wish you all the best on the program, right?
Thanks, man. Ciao.
Thank you.